Each year, dozens of locomotives and multiple units are given names, a tradition that is as old as the railway itself. In the past, great leaders, regiments, countries, leaders of the railway, ocean liners, famous racehorses, and names to commemorate special occasions or places have all been popular. These days, commercial objectives are an understandable consideration, but one company who continues the tradition of naming many of their locomotives after individuals who have made an important contribution in a particular sphere is GB Railfreight. Last year, at the National Rail Awards, retiring editor of Rail magazine and now co-presenter of the Green Signals Railway podcast, Nigel Harris, was surprised to learn that he would soon be adorning the side of a Class 66. Since the naming ceremony itself is the culmination of a great deal of hard work, we thought we would go behind the scenes to learn exactly what it takes to arrange the special occasion. We start with the all-important timetable planning, made harder in this case thanks to the choice of venue. No backwater branch here. No, the location where the naming will take place is one of the busiest stations in the country, London King's Cross. To find out what is required, we meet with Tom Mainprize, GB Railfreight's head of timetable planning.
So, Tom, I'm setting aside for the moment the totally surreal aspect of a locomotive with my name on it.
Congratulations.
Well, short of the telegram from the palace, it is one of the greatest honours I think that's come my way. But let's set that aside for the moment because it is surreal. Mm-hmm. There's a real Jeremy Clarkson element to this, isn't there? We've all been to hundreds of namings, some of us have. And there's a loco stood there, balled up, there's a curtain, somebody says a few words, pulls the cord, everybody claps and goes and has a pork pie and everybody goes home. You think, well, how hard can it be? But I'm sure there's much more to it than that. Just give us a quick walkthrough of what's involved.
Well, first of all, we obviously need a willing victim. So congratulations, firstly, on being that said victim. Planning a charter and a naming specifically is one of the most intricate pieces of planning that you have to do.
Is that right?
Yeah. The reason for that is it's all about making the individual's day special.
And I suppose you've got to find a gap to make it work among everything else that's happening, especially at King's Cross.
Precisely. And so for your naming, it was a case of you're an East Coast man through and through, I believe. And so the first thought in mind was, let's try and make this special.
Really? That's why it was picked at King. Oh, exactly. I'm touched.
Yeah. So it's obviously, as I think previous episodes have shown, it's a very congested part of the network. It's probably one of the most difficult London terminals to plan into, but it's all about you. At that point, we have to start coming up with a plan. So how are we going to make this work? Platforming space. Have we got a nice space to do it in?
So where are you going to do this at King's Cross?
Platform 4 is the idea.
Platform right in the middle?
Right in the middle of the station.
Good grief.
And the reason you want a nice space, because you could do a naming, say, out on the side of the station in platform 0 perhaps, that's under, it's
a bit dark.
It's a bit dark, it's a bit dingy, basically a parcels platform but actually we need to it's got to fit the occasion. You have to basically slightly rework the platforms of the other services to get the space in the platforms.
So all the ARS has got to be
so
rejigged.
ARS isn't part of the timing system, but yes, you effectively have to craft, the timetable is crafted around, which then alters ARS around it.
Okay.
So we can't do this alone as a single operator, just saying, oh, I'm gonna make this happen and put it into platform 4. It sounds great on the face of it. We need others to be involved.
So Network Rail has gone along with all this then?
Yeah, Network Rail has gone along with all of this. We also need other operators buying. So
well, yeah, I guess there's Lumo,
Grand Central, LNER,
Thameslink.
Yeah, Thameslink. You've got also freight operators, because it's one thing getting the platform space, which will involve shuffling stuff around, but you'll need to get there. And the Finsbury Park to King's Cross corridor is fairly constrained.
How long a period have you had to commandeer platform 4 for?
It's just over half an hour. We got
Which is a long time in
yes,
the life of a terminus.
it is indeed. And we got to make the most of the time in the terminus for the naming. What we have done is then negotiated with an operators to say, can we then move your service Grand Central? Please, can we move your service? Oh, we can't do it this way, but we could do it another way. And it's that.
So you go to them with solutions.
Yes, exactly. And they sometimes propose alternatives.
Do they ever say no?
Yes. Yeah, and they're within their right. They're
Yeah.
train service, and we do then have to think, okay, back to the drawing board, and then you have to recraft the idea again from that. Yeah.
So on the day, you have a depot in Peterborough.
Yep.
Am I right in guessing that that's where the locomotive will be prepared? And
Yep.
then it will run light engine to King's Cross, I guess, in time to sit somewhere outside the station, ready to bob in at the right moment.
Absolutely. So you won't make a timetable review yet.
No, you won't. This is real strategic, top level stuff.
Yeah. So yeah, we're investing millions of pounds at Peterborough, and we've got a loco shed there, so that your loco is going to be prepared at Peterborough. John has a mandate for every loco that gets named. They've got to be in top condition and shiny and looking as good as new, effectively. So it'll be prepared there. We'll then run it light engine down the East Coast, round the Hertford Loop, where it will then come to Finsbury Park, and it will sit just south of Finsbury Park in a sort of not an avoiding line. It's part of the main line, but it's effectively a loop to the side where it will sit out of the way. And we deliberately, with namings, will throw in. It's very against what your natural instinct is to make an efficient timetable. We would throw in 30 to 40 minutes where possible to hold the engine back.
Just in case time.
Yes, that's the diplomatic way of saying yes, yeah, just in case time to make up for any, shall we say, things that might happen. Issues that might happen en route, yes. Yeah. So it bobs in on the dot for the naming.
Within its allotted half hour, because you can't step outside that.
Correct.
Well, at the start of its half hour.
Yeah, exactly that. Would you like to have a go?
You can show me how it's done for sure. As I've told you, me and numbers are not great bedfellows, so... Is it supposed to look like that? Is that interference?
You're right. That is the East Coast Main Line timetable.
That is a timetable.
That is the timetable, and it is bewildering, I think, is the best way of describing it.
Oh, there's an adjective I put on front of bewildering. But you're right, it is. Good God.
It's effectively...
So what are we looking at in a few sentences, if that's possible?
Every line on that graph, as we call it, is a train. It is effectively the timetable path of that train. On your left-hand side, you have your locations. So this is Peterborough at the north end, top side of the screen, and then down at the bottom is King's Cross. And along your axes, at the bottom, you've got your hours. So this is places and time.
So is that the morning? That's till 1 o'clock, is it? From midnight until 1 o'clock?
That is middle of the day. So off peak, middle of the day sort of time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Every timer does things differently. So that's to accommodate for eyesight or whatever. But the different colours are to differentiate between the different lines. You've got, in my case, the yellow is the fast lines.
Okay.
Or mains, depending on the railway that you're on at the time. And then my reds are your slow lines, or relief lines as they're known on the broad gauge network down on the western. You also have things like goods lines, so there's pinks in there for goods lines, and then there's a few other colours. So a train is only ever timed, and I'm just going to click on 1 Alpha 20, so that's an LNER service from Leeds to King's Cross. It is only timed at certain points on its journey. So in this instance, we're looking at, it's at Peterborough. It's sat at Peterborough for 4 minutes.
And that's the horizontal.
The horizontal. So that's a train stopped, effectively. And then it departs Peterborough at 11:11. Good time that is. And then it hits Fletton Junction at 11:12.5, and then it's then timed down the East Coast, Fletton, Connington South, Huntingdon, Sandy, Biggleswade, the list goes on. Would you like to see what your service looks like on it?
Yes, let's have a look at that.
I deliberately removed it. And there it is. I've called it 0 Zulu 59 for now.
Okay.
Now this service.
So that's that pale yellow greeny line.
Yeah. So the highlighted line. Now.
So where does it start then?
It starts
right the way up there is a blue line. Yeah.
Yeah. So it starts in Peterborough Yard, our yard at Peterborough, and then it rolls down, and it probably needs a.
So is that in the station then, or in the loop somewhere?
That is in platform 1 at Peterborough Station. I will show you very quickly. There's 3 screens that make up Network Rail's planning system, which is what we're looking at, and it's called. Sorry, I've got to remember how to drive it. This is load time in TPS world, which is the system's name.
Okay.
It's not doing anything more than calculate it, but it will show it on the. I'll get it up on the screen.
So what does a completely vertical line signify then?
At this point, it's just showing, because I've expanded the Peterborough area. You're in platform 1, and then it shows the platforms 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down here. The East Coast timetable, locomotive maximum speed is 75 miles an hour. You're going to get run down. The 2-track section on the East Coast, a light loco will get run down between the 2-track section between Fletton and Connington, where you've got the hidey hole.
And all those sidings are still in at Connington, are they?
No, so Network Rail's planning system hasn't been updated,
okay.
So that's why the pinch of salt applies.
Okay.
So we put you in.
There's a loop, certainly. I've seen the loop, but
yeah.
I thought the sidings had gone long ago.
You're correct in that. They need to be removed, but they haven't been. So you've got a loop of 370 metres, not good for your long freight, but for a light loco of 21 metres.
You can tuck it in there.
We'll tuck it in there, yeah.
Till another gap.
Exactly. So we hold for a good 20 minutes in Connington to let a flight, as they're known, of trains. You've got first of all, your Thameslink local going through, and then you've got the flights of 3
East
high
Coast,
speeds. The two East Coast, and I think that's is that the Grand Central? I'm pretty sure it's the Grand Central 1 Alpha 61. I've probably offended someone if I've got that wrong, and then we have to now run for cover again, as I'd call it, between Connington and Huntingdon, because
and get inside again at Huntingdon.
Getting inside again at Huntingdon, and there is a very small gap.
So galloping along as fast as possible between.
Oh yeah, yes, between the two. Yeah, we'll now head to the sort of the more technical part of the challenge, which is when you get to a place called Alexandra Palace, which you'll know well.
The Ali
Pali and Finsbury Park. The key of all this exercise is always, I already have in my head got an arrival time at King's Cross. I'm having to hit the gap, the only gap in the timetable that I've crafted to get you in. So everything has been done off a time I've already preset at King's Cross.
Don't want to tempt Providence here, but what happens if there's a line-side fire or something? We're all going to be twiddling our thumbs at King's Cross and...
Well, that's why you've got a nice big chunky stop down at, it's about an hour stop at Holloway South Junction.
Oh, okay.
So we build in the slack into the timetable. Yes, there's always the occasion where it could go horribly wrong.
Horribly wrong.
We've had named.
You really are going to be sweating that day.
Yeah, I am. Yes, yeah. Especially with the fragile nature of the East Coast recently. We've had namings where locos have either locos have had issues or there's been infrastructure issues, and you have to adapt to the conditions on the day. But that's where that 45 to an hour becomes really important.
Assume there's a hang-up of more than an hour. What do? Send everybody to the pub and say come back at 2 o'clock, or?
Yes, you hope that doesn't happen. So what I've done in preparation.
Have you got a contingency?
Yes. So I made sure I had the plan in place first, and then I've gone to all the East Coast kind of South End route control team to make sure that they know this is coming.
Okay.
So they're aware. They're aware that Nigel Harris is coming, and that
I can't get used to this.
and it's threading the needle now into the cross.
I was going to say that very thing.
Yeah. This is a three-dimensional game of chess, because it's not only threading the needle into the platform, it's then, I've now moved a train, so I need to now shuffle that around, and it's like dropping a pebble into a pond. I've now moved something, and I've now got to make sure that that works and everything around that works, so it ripples. And this is what a signaller effectively has to do on a day, is if something goes out of sequence or out of place, they are then dealing with all of the ripples and managing that. We're doing a similar exercise, but trying to plan it so it doesn't cause the signaller an impact.
Nigel and Tom then head over to King's Cross itself and Platform 4 to check out the actual location for the naming ceremony.
So, Nigel, we're stood at the end of Platform 4, up at the top end.
The country end,
the country end of the platform. Where would you like this naming to happen?
I'm just turning up to do it, innit? It strikes me that it might be worthwhile putting the nameplate just under the lip of the roof.
Yeah.
And then if it's pouring with rain, we can broadcast that way to the assembled masses. And we can broadcast this way if it's a day like this and you can stand outside. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I think that'll work well. Should we give that a whirl then?
And it'd be good to have the front of the loco with its nose out in the daylight for photographs and things, and we'll be away from the hubbub and bustle of the passengers going about their daily business. We won't be getting in the way of the staff, and we won't have all the announcements every 30 seconds.
Oh, that sounds like a splendid idea. Yeah.
But, it's still very surreal. I can't believe this is happening, but there you go.
So what we've got to do is put the penny on the spot and try and make the driver hit it like in the
Well,
old days.
that's right. Yes, we need to measure from just inside the lip of the thing, and then his front end will be somewhere here, won't it?
Yeah, exactly.
In fact, if he has his cab just out in the daylight, he'll be about right, won't he?
Yeah, I think so. I think you've got the location spot on.
Mind you, he'll be driving from that end, so.
Yeah. And the reason when we're doing a naming for the charter naming, we like to come and see the location, because the worst thing is we stuff you in a corner and it's.
Or you get there and you'd forgotten that light or something.
Precisely.
Yeah.
So
so provided they don't change anything.
Correct.
Between now and November the 4th, we'll all be all right.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Excellent. Yeah.
Well, we got a plan there then, I think.
Let's go with that.
Let's do that.
Good luck.
Whilst Nigel and Tom spend a bit more time watching the trains come in and leave from King's Cross, some 200 miles to the north in West Yorkshire, a father and son team are busy with a critical part of any locomotive naming, making the nameplates themselves. The job of casting the plates rests with Procast Foundry Limited, based in Netherfield Mills, Cleckheaton, West Yorkshire. Father and son team of Stephen and Jim Cliff are exceptionally busy, working 7 days a week to satisfy the demand for what are really quite superb castings for the railway sector, something they've been doing since 1992. The first task is to create a wooden pattern, which is done with a bandsaw and into which are placed the letters. In Nigel's case, the letters are standard and the font Rail alphabet, and so letters that have been used elsewhere in other castings are arranged to form the name required. The pattern box is then filled with foundry sand, rather confusingly known as green sand, although it's red when new and turns black when fired. It's reused as well, with just a bit of new green sand being required to top it up from time to time. Foundry sand is used because the natural clay causes it to bind together and retain the shape of the letters or logos. The metal used is aluminium, not least of which because it's light. It arrives in ingots that weigh around 7 kilograms each. The crucible, the vessel in which the metal will be heated in the furnace, holds around 26 kilograms of aluminium and is heated to a temperature of between 680 and 760 degrees C, as this is the optimal pouring temperature. This takes around 20 minutes. When at temperature, Jim adds a degassing tablet that produces nitrogen to remove any dissolved hydrogen and impurities in the metal. The crucible is lifted carefully from the furnace. It's heavy, and the molten aluminium within is at between 680 and 760 degrees C. Jim scrapes off the slag or impurities from the surface of the molten aluminium. Time now to pour the metal into the pattern box. The foundry sand has moisture in it, and so steam is produced. The back pressure on the pour could cause the pattern box to explode if the nameplate was a large one, so multiple holes or vents are used. Rail chairs are used to weigh down the lid of the box to provide additional protection. Jim and Daz carefully lift the crucible and pour in the molten aluminium. After years of practice and many hundreds of castings, they make the process look remarkably straightforward. The cooling process is quite quick, and within 20 minutes or so, the casting can be removed from the pattern box. This is done very carefully. The plates are now ready for sanding and polishing. Sanding first to remove the excess using various levels of grit paper from 120 to 400 grit. Then polishing using a pedestal polisher or mop. Polishing soap is used to secure the stunning finish that Procast plates are well known for. Finally, it's time to paint. Aluminium is a non-ferrous metal and does not really like to be painted. Plus, the colours used by GB Railfreight are quite challenging. So an etching primer is used first, which creates a key for the paint to adhere to. A primer of yellow paint is applied, and then eventually GB Railfreight's gloss orange is applied, which looks absolutely stunning. The plates are now ready to put in a box and send to the customer. The day of the naming finally arrives, and Nigel has a quick coffee to steady his understandable nerves, while Stef briefs him on the running order. At the appointed hour, guests begin to assemble at the end of platform 4. Here's legendary railwayman Chris Green with journalist Phil Haig. Exactly on time, driver Tony Fuller brings 66312 into King's Cross and stops precisely at the agreed location. The locomotive does look immaculate, as Tom promised. The pleasing livery of blue and orange, especially fine in the low, late autumn sun, and looks as if someone has spent hours polishing every last square inch. John Smith, the managing director of GB Railfreight, takes understandable pride in ensuring his locomotives look the part, and 66312 certainly does today. Tom removes the cardboard that has been protecting the nameplates from prying eyes, so as not to spoil the surprise. Joanne Marshall, events manager, and Claire Hurley, PA to the business development director at GB Railfreight, help Tom put up the curtain over the nameplate that Nigel will eventually pull off to reveal his name. As soon as the guests have assembled, and conscious of the fact that time is tight, Managing Director of GB Railfreight, John Smith, takes the microphone for the main event of the day.
When I was asked to do this with Nigel, I sort of scribbled some notes down, and I came up with 5 words that probably best describe Mr. Harris.
Oh, God.
So we will go through them in an order where the best one is last, mate. So here we go. Enthusiastic, I think. I mean, Nigel, right the way through from your original career in the press, moving on to Steam World, I think it was originally that you edited, and all the work you've done with the Great Central Railway, there's been an obvious love of what we do here, and regardless of which part of the industry we're in or whether we're retired or whatever, I think most of the people here share that love and share that enthusiasm, and I think everything that you ever wrote was always based on the fact that you want to see this industry succeed, and I think that's to be applauded. Networker was the next thing. Bloody hell, could you get the shoe leather, whether it be you here in the Houses of Parliament or anyone else. All the time I used to bump into you at Peterborough, you're always off heading somewhere to lobby and to get information, but also to offer opinion and be influential in the industry. And sadly, I always knew when you rang, there was a debate about rail freight, how is it going? But there was always a sting in the tail. There was, John, just before you go, can you run a passenger train to Rail Live from Oxford for me next week? And you'd go, I mean, you'd never say no to when you were making the requests. Networker, and I think one I've already mentioned actually, but opinionated. You had your opinions. I found myself violently agreeing with a lot of what you said, Nigel. And I think, you know, some of the faces here will have disagreed with some of your views, but you were certainly opinionated, and all those led to you being an influencer, chap. And I missed that a bit. Green signals hopefully will step in to some of the space, and my wife has been explaining to me how podcasts work, and I haven't quite worked it out yet, but she seems to meander off, walking down our local lane, coming back telling me the history of the Great Wall of China. So I'm sure if I listen to your green signals, mate, that will also help. And, you know, I think that was also reflected in being an influencer by the number of times you were on TV. I almost got sick of it when you were on there. And the last but not least is beer. So your new pub in your garden, I think, betrays the fact, sir, that you have a passion for beer. And that is where we're going to be heading next. As I mentioned earlier, we'll be heading up to the Betchman at the top. So for me personally, Nigel, it's with great pleasure that we put your name on the side of a loco that will go far and wide in the country, and you will have to suffer in Peterborough. There are double entendres that other people who have got locos named after them come up with. You're not very reliable, and you do, and lots of other things can be said. But I hope you'll enjoy the odd occasion where you happen to coincide. I'd like to say a big thank you and offer you the chance to say a few words before you unveil your loco, sir.
Thanks, John. Thanks, John. Some incredibly kind words there, which I'm very grateful for. And thanks everybody for coming. I mean, looking from one end to the other from this fantastic group of people, it is my railway family. It's people I've recruited, people I've worked with, people on the railway who've I've agreed with and disagreed with, who's helped me considerably. There's all sorts of people. Former Minister of the Crown here in front of me, thank you for coming, Hugh. Lots of people, former BTP, there's all there, former Chief Inspector of Railways, everybody's in. It's really good of you all to come. So thank you. It does mean an enormous amount to me. Hang on, here we go. Now, named locomotives. When I were a lad, named locos were always very special and historically named after regiments, racehorses, VC winners, generals, admirals and air marshals, battleships, far-flung colonies, even UK towns and cities, halls and castles. So I'm aware that I'm somewhat standing on the shoulders of giants here and history to be joining that litany of names. But standing here, I have to tell you right now, I suddenly understand the full meaning of the expression imposter syndrome. It seems very odd indeed to think that this thing's going to be around the country hauling freight trains, and it will be truly surreal, John. If I'm ever stood in the rain at Peterborough and it goes by, you know, it's very few people get that privilege, do they? So thanks for that. Now, back in LNER days in the 1930s, I mean, not current LNER days, when the A3 Pacifics were named after racehorses, I used to ponder the reactions of those wandering to these platform ends who found engines named Pretty Polly, Salmon Trout, or Spearmint, all Derby winners, but rather strange names. I don't want to speculate what anybody at the line side is going to think when they see this go by and think, who the hell's that? But I shall get a lot of satisfaction of it. So, but you know, thanks to you, John, and your entire team in setting this up, especially to Joanne Marshall over here and Tom Mainprize, who showed me just how much work's involved in getting something like this organised. Mm-hmm. All the operators here, LNER for starters, but also all the others, Grand Central, Hull and Lumo, have all rejigged the platforms to create us this little space to be able to do this. And that in itself is a very humbling thing. But as with any special event, it's only made really special by the people that you share it with. And I'm delighted to share it with this particular cross-section of friends who've worked in various aspects around the railways over the last, well, 28 years that I did on rail. You don't even get that for murder, do you, John? And I'm particularly touched and pleased that it's a freight engine. Next year is the 200th anniversary of the Stockton and Darlington Railway. which, although had some passenger traffic, its birth was for coal.
It was.
And it was a freight railway. And I love the idea that, as I have got a loco with my name on it, that it's a freight engine. That somehow seems entirely appropriate. And that's about it, really. Thanks ever so much again for all of you for coming. And we just need to get on with it now, I
We
suppose,
do.
John.
I will take the microphone off you, chap, after 3. Ready, chap? 1, 2, 3, go! Woo!
Following the naming ceremony, there is plenty of opportunity for photographs. This is an occasion to treasure, and the photographic record will provide joy for years to come. One of the features of any naming is the presentation of a miniature nameplate and a model of the locomotive mounted in a case and, of course, bearing appropriate nameplates itself. John Smith does the honours and presents Nigel with these priceless mementos of the day. Nigel's current team of colleagues from Green Signals, Richard Bowker and Stef Foster, pose for a photo with Nigel. It's also a chance for the GB Railfreight team, who have worked so hard to make the day possible for Nigel, to have their team photo taken as well. Many of Nigel's former colleagues from Rail, the magazine he edited for 28 years, assemble for a photograph. Other guests reflect the respect that senior colleagues in the industry have for Nigel. Present on the day are Hugh Merriman, former Minister for Rail, Chris Green, Tim Shoveler, Professor Andrew McNaughton, Ian Prosser, Len Porter, Bill Reeve and David Horn. One of Nigel's favourite haunts during his rail years was St Pancras Station, Carluccio's for breakfast meetings, and the Betjeman Arms for the occasional lunch or end-of-day chat. So it's only appropriate that it's to the Betjeman Arms that the assembled guests repair to enjoy a wonderful spread and have the chance to catch up with old friends and colleagues. At King's Cross and at the end of the allotted time slot, and entirely in accordance with Tom's meticulously planned timetable, 66312 Nigel Harris departs for Peterborough and its first turn of duty as a named locomotive, 4 Lima 14 and an intermodal run from Peterborough to Felixstowe. It's been a day to remember.